Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome again to a thing where I talk about things. Specifically today, my first role-playing game, as opposed to sometimes I do biology or chemistry. Today we are not doing biology or chemistry, we are doing stories from my childhood. And by childhood, I mean that time when I was a teenager, I suppose. It was in high school. But anyway, Children of the Sandler is where we picked off. We left off just after leaving the All Thing, which was a glorious, technologically advanced city out in the wilds, the northern wilds, as it were. And so in any case, though, our heroes were Iggy. Actually, he didn't really have this name. This was the thing. He became Iggy. Everyone came to know him as Iggy. And this requires a bit of past explanation, which, I'll go ahead and I'll get into this. Originally, the guy who was playing the character Iggy was playing a wolfman. There are like these great big wolfmen that you can play. They're called Luparathi. And my friend had been playing a Luparathi, and the Luparathi's name was Iggy. And so for whatever reason, the girl who was playing Mindy the Elf didn't feel like learning a new name for a new character. And so when Iggy retired, when the wolfman retired, and my friend began playing this other character, she just didn't learn the new name. She just called him Iggy. And part of that was Iggy's fault. Part of that was because my friend refused to tell new players what his character's name was. He would just make stuff up. You know, he was Thrakkerzod at one point. He was Thrakkerzod from Dimension 1B. In fact, I will tell you about that today. But in any case, though, this character's real name actually got erased from the character sheet because my friend refused to admit that he had any previous name aside from the one that he'd come to be known as, which he changed quite frequently until he gained a lot of notoriety. But anyway. Iggy, the captain, who at this time was not known as anything except for by Mindy the Elf, who called him Iggy inexplicably because prior to that, he was a dog. Iggy was a dog. So, yes, Iggy the captain. Pop-Tart, who I think quit showing up at that point, and Pop-Tart just mysteriously vanished from the crew. He didn't get on the ship that night. He didn't, he just stayed in the All Thing for the rest of his life. And that would be about it, I believe. Yep, two-man crew, plus Twigs and Berries, the NPCs. And also, as I said, Kilala. Thanks, guys. Thanks to those of you who remember this. Kilala, Sandler's adopted niece. And, yeah, or niece, or adopted daughter, or something like that. The worst little character that we had on the ship, until eventually Sandler himself, Sandler the Third, got on the boat. But that's later on. And anyway, though, so they were headed north for reasons that I never came to be privy to, and I don't believe that anyone ever actually did explain why they were doing this. This was just something that Iggy decided that had to be done. And on his trip north, he came across an iceberg, and it was surrounded with penguins. And of course, two people as well. Inexplicably, there were just two men out on this iceberg waving for help for any passing ship that was traveling far, far north for whatever insane reasons they would be traveling, which for the most part would be none unless you were interested in exploring, which nobody apparently was. But anyway, though, so two men stranded inexplicably on an iceberg surrounded by penguins waving for help. So Iggy decides to do the Samaritan thing, and he dive bombs the two people on the iceberg with his airship, which causes us to have to leap off into the cold waters below, thereby risking death by cold. But fortunately, though, Iggy then pulls up and he gives us a ride. He lifts us up onto the ship, and he asks these two characters their names. The characters were Egil and Rummy. Egil was an old man, an old engineer from the old school of arcane engineering. He could build arcane devices, which at that time I didn't really understand what all that meant. As it turned out, an arcane engineer, Sandler was an arcane engineer, and I didn't know this at the time. So what that meant was that arcane engineering was the most overpowered skill in the entire game, and if you were an arcane engineer, you could do anything. You could make yourself a super suit, you could use spells, you could like build fully functioning weapon, like you could build like fully automatic. They built robots at some point, like not even like demon engines, just like fully functioning robots with AI. Like an arcane engineer could do anything. Egil didn't know this, of course. Egil was an old guy. He wasn't caught up on all the most recent, up-to-date things. Egil had read the book. Egil was aware that he could make a flashlight, in essence. He knew that there were some things he could do. He didn't know that he could make robots. Yes, so Egil, old guy, wore rather nice clothes, was inexplicably lost on an iceberg. And, of course, then there was also Rummy. And Rummy was a slightly overweight, somewhat pot-bellied gentleman in his late 30s, I believe. He was a former deckhand on a ship that had abandoned us on an iceberg. And so Iggy asked us, he says, well, why did they abandon you? And we said, we don't know. That was never communicated to us. We were simply dropped off on this iceberg, and then we were picked up for reasons we haven't been told. And Iggy said, well, we're going to the frozen north. Is that okay? And we says, I don't know. Do you have warm clothes and food? And Iggy said, yes, we do. And we joined the party. That was how we joined the party. Characters introduced. As it became to be known, this was how characters usually got involved in Children of the Sandler. We began making a joke out of it, where every time a character would appear, we would literally have them sometimes like burst through walls. And then, like, as an introduction, we would just shout, "Character spawned!" Like, to the rest of the party, to let everyone know that, okay, my character is here, everybody. I'm part of the party now. And we would just have to invite these people into the group, because it'd be like, why? Well, he burst through the wall. Surely he must be a significant individual. I kid you not, like, we really did have, someone had taken a mining skill, and so Sandler was like, oh yeah, you just mine right through the wall. We were like, why? What was I mining for? Like, it was like, Sandler, my mining skill is for, like, flowers, because I live in a tree, and it was a big magical tree, and then he's like, no, you're in a cavern, and you mine through the cavern walls, and now you're in the cavern. And he's like, okay. So, yes, characters spawned. We had Iggy and Rummy just spawned on the iceberg and then picked up by the group. They could have just flown overhead, and we probably would have spawned somewhere else. Sandler would have moved us. But anyway, though, as it turned out, we were going to the frozen north to investigate something that the elves had done, that we had no real understanding of this. But we got up to the frozen north after a few weeks of getting lost. Because one of the things, Iggy actually refused to leave the wheel. He would tie himself down to it and then stay up for 3 nights solid and then usually fall asleep. And the problem was, he didn't have any navigation skills or any skills. As I said, he knew how to fire guns, he knew how to do arcane engineering. He did not invest into skills like navigating or driving ships or anything like that. So he just drove it poorly in whatever direction he thought he needed to go, and he rolled dice until Sandler told him he was where he needed to be. Because Iggy had long ago realized that Sandler had no idea what he was doing, and that Sandler would not commit to a total party kill. Some GMs will do this. Sometimes when you play these games, your GM will get tired of everyone at the table, and they will kill everybody. And then they'll say, like, well, you made me do it. Like, they don't hold themselves accountable. But Sandler at least did not stoop to a total party kill. It was part of the way that he designed the game, where everything kind of revolved around Sandler's character. And the problem was that Sandler's character did not really know anybody else. So if he killed all of us, then he would have to, like, reintroduce himself to an entirely new group, and then he would have to integrate. Like, he actually forced me to abandon a character at one point because he was a pacifist, and he also was not this was really stupid. He made me leave the table, and it was like one of those I was mad at him that day. But anyway, though, yeah. So, very strange, not sure how I got off track, but we are going north. And we found a cave, and inside this cave was a giant circular device made up of concentric circles, and Sandler had a diagram, actually. He'd spent all of his time in class drawing out this diagram, and it was basically just like, it was like runes. It was like what you think. It was just a gigantic room full of runes. You didn't really need the diagram. I mean, it made no difference to us. He did this sort of thing sometimes where he would create these charts, and then he would expect us to sit there and, like, examine the charts and figure out what was going on in his head, because he'd leave a clue in the chart, and it was always something like, it was a clue that only he would have recognized because he was thinking about it at the time, and then he would get very mad at us because we would just ignore the clues. He would, he would call us names for it. And anyway, so there was a clue in the chart, surely, and so we just kind of glanced over the chart and handed it back to him. We were like, whatever. And so we immediately set to destroy this room full of runes. We didn't really know anything about it. We saw what are called harvesters in, like, a supply closet in the back. I don't know why they kept this room in the back, but it was full of harvesters, and harvesters are demon engines. They're actually the earliest, like, prototypes to demon engines. What they were is they were wooden contraptions that were infused with a demon, and they were given, like, threshing devices, and they were used sort of for a home militia. This was when the other forces began to land their troops on Lycerial, and they had to come up with an answer. I think that's about when they started using the demon engines, is when they were trying to force people out. And the demon engines actually proved it actually got them out of the country for a little while. And then they started using them more often and refining them, and they started dabbling more in demonology and stuff like that. Anyway, though, so there were just a bunch of disabled harvesters in the back of this thing, these like militia-style demon engines. But harvesters are still completely deadly because they're immune to normal weapons. Like, if you're just walking around with a weapon that isn't blessed by the church of whatever, then you are screwed, pretty much. You can chip away at these things, but pretty soon you're gonna just get shredded by the harvesting implement. So Iggy comes out and he says, "Everyone, I think we need to go." And we go, "Why?" And he goes, no reason, let's just go. And so he pushes us all out the door. We learn nothing about the room that we were in. And he just leaves. Like, he's just like, good enough. No, we learned everything we need to do. We made it to the north. That was mission accomplished. Good job, everyone. We can put it down on the maps. We're doing mapping. And that is what we came to do. And we said, "Oh, is that what we came to do?" And he said, "Yes, that is what we came to do." And so we took off and we flew south back towards the Althang. And it was a glorious, glorious trip. We were awarded no experience points, and we were given no explanation as to what had just happened. However, the following morning, I believe it was, something weird happened. I can't remember. Oh yeah, that's right. When we were making characters, Sandler would always make us roll a d20, and I rolled a 20. Now, normally you'd think that this would be really good, because you roll high, you've got like a 1 in 20 chance, so 1 out of every 20 characters you make would get this special thing that Sandler would bestow upon him. But here's the thing that went wrong, was Sandler told me that I had suddenly developed split memories. Because I had rolled this 20. Something happened, we woke up the next morning, and Sandler pulled me aside, and he starts telling me about these memories that I have of us doing 2 different things. Like, I can remember doing one thing, like where we went to the caves, and I can remember doing another thing where we didn't go to the caves. And so I had kind of this multi-perception of like a multiverse. And I thought that this would be a rather confusing experience. So I started complaining about it a bit to the other characters, and then I started to get a little bit irate about it because everyone was ignoring me, and I was like, "I cannot remember what I had for breakfast yesterday," and and I was old, like I was an old guy, and so I was just running around. It sounded like I was losing my mind. I was getting senile, and so this made Sandler laugh. And at that point, it became that if you rolled a 20, and I was the first person to have this happen, if you rolled a 20, you became insane. Your character became insane as a result of getting this lucky roll. And so from that point forward, you could no longer remember what happened between past and present. Your character was screwed. So, Egil became screwed. Thanks to this sort of thing, we just overnight became screwed. Of course, no one realized what exactly it meant. We went back to the Althang, and went to the stores, and Iggy decided to pass by that place that he'd firebombed to see if maybe they were rebuilding. And lo and behold, the place had been rebuilt, like completely from the ground up. And the turtle guy that had been shot was alive. And so Iggy freaks out. He says, "What is this? You know, what has happened here?" And the turtle guy goes, "Oh, what do you mean, sir?" And he goes, and then Iggy just goes, "Nothing at all." And so he just excuses himself from the place, and he comes out, and he tells us all, he goes, "Everyone," he goes, "the Althang is haunted." And so everyone's just like, "Oh, okay, what does that mean?" And he goes, "We have to purge Althang." And we say, "Oh, okay, specifically what do we have to purge?" And he goes, "All of the Althang. We just have to purge Althang." And so he was in charge, and we said, "All right, that sounds good." We didn't have any other direction because that quest to go up and see those ruins, like I said, I never found out what that was really all about. We had apparently failed that quest in a monumental way, and now we were just moving on. We were completely free-flying. We had no clue. So we bought a whole bunch of stuff, and we built a whole bunch of like Molotov cocktails and whatnot. And because it's an old-timey sort of city, all the buildings were really close together, and there was no real fire department to speak of, so we just took our ship and we tossed Molotov cocktails over the town and caused like massive firestorms across the entire place. And then we decided to fly away towards Crace being the capital area. And I believe that is where I will stop things in our tale of ridiculous destruction. We got away with it, by the way. They did not stop us. So, yes, I will pick it up next time with the continued adventures of Iggy and Egil and Rummy and Mindy the Elf. Until then, I suppose I will catch you guys later.